We go back to the lab with Jordan Moore and John Jackson on Trojans Live.
And it's time to talk to the head coach. It's his show. Clay Helton joins us now on Trojans Live. Jordan Moore and John Jackson with him. Get ready for your next big game. Let Ralph's help make game time a little easier. Place your order today for ready-made party platters at your neighborhood Ralph's Deli and Ralphs.com/order online. Thank you, Coach, for joining us later here on a Tuesday night. You're fresh off the practice field. We couldn't be out there. How'd it go there tonight as you start a new week?
Yeah, really good practice for us. We went a lot against each other. We're trying to simulate the speed of the game that we're going to see on Saturday. You know, anytime you play the likes of a Christian McCaffrey and a Stanford defense, I think the more that you can go against good on good, I think that helps you. So a lot of today's practice, we went against each other.
You know, talk about the offense a little bit, because I know that, you know, after the Utah State game, you commented that this is more the style of the USC offense that we want to play, and the identity.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable where you're at in terms of, you know, the players now sort of understand the identity of what you're trying to do?
I showed them after the game the stat sheet after the first half, and I really felt it when we walked in at halftime was exactly what you would want. You looked up and you had 18 minutes and 47 seconds worth of ball control offense. We had 49 plays to their 23 plays. So third down efficiency was great. We got in the red zone. We were 3 for 3 with 21 points, so touchdowns instead of field goals. So the balance just seemed right, and the ball control seemed right.
One area I know that you wanted to get a little bit better at was the deep ball. You talked to me about it after the game, and I was just wondering, is that more? Are you more referring to the throw and the catch of opportunities that were there and attempted and just were not succeeded, or are there more opportunities to pull the trigger that you would like to see?
No, you know, we had some opportunities there in that first half. Max threw a great ball to Darius, and I know Darius would love to have had that one. He had an unbelievable game, 7 catches, and I know he wished he had that 8th one. And then there were 2 opportunities that Darius beat his guy really well, and we underthrew the ball. And then we were just off with Juju on a one-on-one opportunity down our right sideline. Those one-on-one opportunities, as we have seen, don't come up a lot right. for us, especially with our wideout. But we ran the ball, and it created some. 43 running opportunities, and we were running the ball well, so it creates some one-on-one opportunities. And like I've told the guys, the second part of that is you got to hook up on your deep balls. We have to be able to do that to be an effective offense.
Talk about offensive line play a little bit. I know the opponent was different, Alabama compared to Utah State, but it looked like the offensive line they were more in the right place at the right time. They had better run fits. Yeah. What did you see in terms of watching the film, in terms of making sure that offensive line had the continuity that it had even going back to last year?
Yeah, I thought assignment-wise it was a lot cleaner game. We had 2 sacks in the game, but one was a misread by Max on a hot. We were in a 5-man protection, and they brought 6, and anytime that happens, you got to get the ball out. But assignment-wise, from run and pass game, the offensive line was a lot more effective, a lot more assignment sound, and that created more efficiency.
What was it? Was it the opponent that really triggers to that, or what would you attribute maybe some of the, I wouldn't call it confusion, but the lack of efficiency compared to from one week to the next?
Yeah, I think we got caught up in the pageantry of the game a little bit in the first game, and then I think they settled down in the friendly confines of the Coliseum and really are starting to learn that it's about doing your job in whatever situation that you're in. And we focused on our job the entire week, and they brought it to the table, and I commend them. I think Coach Callaway and that offensive line really set the tone for us in that game.
Well, one player who's been a rock through the first 2 games, we just spoke with Cam Smith. He's 22 tackles already. He's leading the Pac-12. Yeah. I thought he was in a race against time. I watched him in camp. I guess you were just sort of bringing him along slowly. I was worried he wasn't even going to be ready in time. And, he looks like his old self out there. What makes him such a special player?
He's one of the most instinctive football players I've been around in my 21 years. Just, everybody knows his physicality in between the tackles, but the way he diagnoses the play, he's a student of the game. He's one of those guys that know what play's coming before the ball's even snapped. But his instinctiveness and then his physicality, I think, show up.
And that's a key matchup, obviously, Stanford's offensive line against the front 7 of the Trojans. It's that Stanford. I mean, I know they have 2 returning starters that come back from last year's team. what are we going to see from them? What have you seen on film?
Yeah, I think David has done a nice job of changing a little bit. You're seeing a lot more 11 personnel looks, 3 wide looks, even if it's with 2 tights and spreading it out. I saw in the Kansas State game they're in 21 personnel with fullback and tailback, and McCaffrey's out as a slot receiver. So they're giving you 3 wide looks and running and throwing the ball. The quarterback was very efficient. He was 14 of 18, wasn't asked to do a ton. But between the running game and being efficient in the pass, and they were effective.
And I want to touch on that. You mentioned it a little bit. McCaffrey, the one difference is, because I watched some film too, he's not just lined up in the backfield anymore. He's not just in the Wildcat anymore. Yeah. He's lined up at receiver, like legit at receiver, like an outside, wide out. Yeah. How much does that change things?
Yeah, he is without question the best player we played last season, and that is the biggest attribute. We face a lot of good runners in our league, but the guy that can come out of the backfield and route run like he does, and do it from the wide receiver position is just ridiculous. I remember being up in that game in the Pac-12 championship game. We had just gotten up, and it's 3rd and 5, and we were matched up in man coverage, and I was like, oh my God, please don't let him please don't let him go out for a route. And he did, and then all of a sudden it's 60 yards and they retake the lead again. So he's one of those matchup nightmares that you have to focus on and know where he's at all times.
Yeah, when Clancy Pendergast was here the last time, he had a great game plan for Stanford, and that a night none of us will ever forget in the Coliseum. But it was funny, that night he played just 12 or 13 guys, and at the time we talked about it as, hey, it was the sanctions. The team was really limited. But we've noticed through the first 2 games, and maybe it's that the offense has controlled the ball a lot, but he seems to like a lean and mean rotation. Is that something that you guys have talked about? Is that just the way he is?
No, that's what he did. He did it the first time he was here. He has a first team and a second team. He leans on that first team, and then if there's an injury or a guy gets really gassed, he come off. I give you a great example. Leon McQuay is playing really, really well right now, but got a little bit of ding, had to come out for second, and there's Lockett. Comes in and he does his job and makes the most of his opportunity. So, every guy's got to be ready. And what I really appreciate about Clancy, it doesn't matter if you're first string or fifth string, he coaches them all. Yeah. Because he knows that at some point in time that kid's going to have to go in.
And that's sort of the thing is, Clancy seems to magically come up with these game plans that, to stop people. And without giving away the game plan, obviously, what has to happen? We're sitting here, next week, and we're excited about a USC win. What do you say has to happen for victory?
Well, what I really appreciate about Clancy, you look at the Alabama game, and he diagnoses the strength. All right, you got to take Ridley out of the game and make out the other guys play. Right. And what does he do? Ridley gets 2 catches for 9 yards. He goes in the next game. You got a team that rushed for 400 yards with a tailback and a great quarterback in their opening game. He says we're going to stop the run at all costs. He holds them to under 50 yards. Right. So he always diagnoses the strengths of the offense and takes that away and makes you play with the other pieces of the puzzle you have. And if you beat us with that, so be it. Great for you. But I've always appreciated it. It's about the personnel matchups and taking care of their best player.
Well, that chess match is certainly going to be one to watch on Saturday. We'll get into some more Stanford talk when we come back. One more segment with the head coach, Clay Helton, on Trojans Live.
Here are Jordan Moore and John Jackson.
Jordan Moore, John Jackson, and Clay Helton back on Trojans Live and back on Facebook Live. Wave to everyone, Coach. They're watching you on Facebook Live. And throw in a question that they've been commenting throughout the show. And Alcides Perez Jr., let me just sort of paraphrase your question. But, it's about these true freshmen. It's something I've been meaning to ask you for a while. Now, you've been here for 7 years now. And this program, because of the sanctions, had become so dependent on true freshmen. I mean, there were years where you couldn't even imagine Robert Woods redshirting, Marquise Lee redshirting, Sua Craven's redshirting. It just wasn't even a possibility. But this team, and you could just tell the moment fall camp started, it seems like you're far less dependent on the true freshmen. And so there were some questions about Tyler Vaughns, Olawale Batiku, Connor Murphy. Which one of these true freshmen do you think maybe can emerge as the season goes on?
Yeah, all great players. All great players. We're just fortunate now. We're back at, we started the season at 82. We put 3 scholarship walk-ons on scholarship, and to get to 85. So our depth is so much better, and we've stayed healthy. Knock on wood.
Yep.
You know, so we're letting them progress, and guys are helping us. You look up and a Michael Pittman blocks a punt that leads to a score. You see Jack in there being a role player on defense for us and being the off returner away from Adoree, and Pi Young gets down on kickoff coverage. So those guys will help us where needed and be allowed to grow. Got to see big Connor Murphy make a tackle there at the end, but it's not like it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago where it was like, okay, this is it. I hope they're ready.
Right.
You know, now they're able to be put in on our terms, you know, to allow them to grow at the right pace rather than saying, okay, here's Alabama or here's Stanford. Good luck to you.
Go get them.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you, too, about it because, you know, old school, and I know that, you know, people, it's a new mentality. Freshmen want to come in and play right away. But the old school way is it that the right way to build a program? Just, I mean, forget about players and individuals. There's always going to be some freshmen that play. But if you really want to build a program, does it have to be a situation where most, you know, maybe let's call it 90% of the guys that come in truly need that redshirt year so they really help you in year 4 and 5?
Well, as a head coach, you always, you know, your job is to win games and to win championships. So you take the players that you know can help you win a championship and you go ahead and play them if they're ready. If they're not ready, then grow them up. And all of a sudden to have a team of, you know, redshirt juniors, redshirt seniors, we're getting ready to play one.
I was going to say, your opponent
I
is
look across the board. It's all redshirt juniors and seniors. It's older kids. That's what you hope for as a head coach. That means you're building a program and you're not having a lot of attrition. And that's what I feel right now. You know, with what we've been able to do over the last couple of years, where there hasn't been a ton of attrition. We've got our numbers up. We've got some depth, so we don't have to use all of our freshmen if they're not ready.
Trivia question, JJ. Who's leading the Trojans in rushing through 2 games?
Cedric Ware.
That's right.
That's right.
Is that a good example of a guy that maybe, you know, last year was just sort of, you know, learning this place and learning college football, and all of a sudden, sophomore year is ready to go?
Yeah, I talked to Ced today about, you know, what an awesome opportunity. You made the most of your opportunity. You never know when it's going to come. You know, we have our own developmental practice for our young kids that we do on Monday where the vets are out there. We do some correction walkthroughs and get ready for a little bit of the next game. We send them in, and we just focus on our young kids and those kids that maybe didn't have as many reps in the game or didn't have any, and keep developing them. And Ced's been one of those guys. And then all of a sudden you look up, and he's made the most of his opportunity because he was ready. He invested in himself.
You know, talk about the, you know, what importance or, you know, things that are important in this game. I think that the game plans probably for Stanford and USC, if you know, go inside, are sort of the same. Control the ball, run the ball, possess the ball. You talk about the importance of that role of, you know, possessing the ball, and is probably your best defense your ball control on offense.
Yeah, no question. I thought one of the key points of the game last game was the third down efficiency. You know, 7 of 13, over 50%. 2 of 2 on 4th down and short. You know, in that first half, we kept 6 of 8 drives alive because of our 3rd and 4th down performances. So that's going to be really important in this game to keep the ball away from a very dynamic player and dynamic offense in Stanford. So offense is the key, and that'll help our defense.
What about Stanford's defense? I mean, we've obviously talked so much about McCaffrey, and they put up big numbers in that Pac-12 championship game against you, but a lot of these games have, you know, been 13-10 type affairs, and you know Stanford defensively is a stingy bunch. Who stands out on that side, and what is it that's so tricky about their system?
Well, I tell you, they do a good job of bouncing in and out of both a 3-4 front to a 4-down nickel front and having to make that communication and know exactly what they're in. A multiple of coverages, a lot of movement pressures. Very similar to what we saw last week. Last week was a great tune-up for what we're getting ready to see this week as far as a structure and the amount of pressures. Very similar. So it helps us. Now, you never get the true speed and physicality that a Stanford brings, but it really, that last week helped us.
Well, the one thing they've also shown, and you know, I saw it, you know, in the first game at least, is a lot of rotation on defense. Usually before they were, you know, they had their 7 guys and they were a bunch of dudes that could play, and they stuck with those guys. But this year's group for Stanford, there's more depth, more rotation. Does it change how you game plan?
Yeah, especially in the linebackers. We saw, you know, usually I was so used to you seeing a Martinez and a Tarpley and the Scav, and they're just in there every snap, every play. And, you know, it looks like they're trying to find out what's the perfect matchup for them. And a lot of kids played in that opening ball game to see, they're probably trying to figure out what their starting lineup is. But they did play. It looked like 6 to 7 different linebackers in that game.
We were talking earlier about the usage numbers, and they really used McCaffrey a ton. And in the Kansas State game, of their touches, he got 64% of them. Adore's been that guy in terms of snaps in the past. You've gotten his usage down a little bit. Big opportunity for him this week, 2 speedy receivers for Stanford. Are you happy with where Adore's role is right now and opportunity to thrive as that shutdown corner? God knows he can make a special teams play if they give him a chance.
Yeah, what's ended up happening, I thought the investment in training camp for him to really work his technique and fundamentals and try to be the best corner in the country is really coming into play. He really hasn't been thrown at very much, and there's not a lot of guys open.
Did they throw at him last week?
No, it just he is right in the hip every time, and even the play he made on Ridley's deep ball in the first game, he has become a very dynamic corner and a better corner, even better corner than he was last year because of the investment we made in training camp and the investment he made in himself. But with him with the ball in his hands, he's dynamic, as we saw with the punt return. There are going to be times that he's going to have to help us on offense. It's just not going to be what you saw, the 15 to 20 snaps, that may be in there like we used last year. But there'll be 3 or 4 times, in a game maybe that he can get in and create either a decoy or a big play for us.
Help me with mindset of offensive line and defensive line, because that's where this game is going to be won or lost, for both teams. You had Alabama. They're physical, they're disciplined up front. You didn't get your best showing. Talk to me about mindset of the offensive and defensive fronts going into this one. Is it one of those things where guys are a little bit on edge? I can just remember when I was playing and have a bad game, drop a ball or whatever. You just can't wait for the next opportunity.
Yeah, I felt that last week, and I think it really put a chip on the shoulder of our guys. They walked into the Alabama game and didn't have their best game. And that's just to be frank, and they really got a chip on their shoulder, and I thought performed at a higher level this last game. And they need to keep doing that. And today's practice was very physical and very long practice for them. There were some tired people walking off that field, and it started with the offensive line. What the practice they had today was a Stanford versus USC practice.
Well, it's going to be a Stanford versus USC game on Saturday. You're going to need that chip. Go on the road, Pac-12 opener.
Roll your sleeves up.
Can't wait. They have been fun games the last few years, and looking forward to another one. Good luck, Coach, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to come back to wrap up Trojans Live next on ESPN LA 710.